So my name is David Morin. I'm here representing the Academy Software Foundation. I'm the executive director of the foundation we'll talk about, and I'm working at Epic Games in my day job, industry relations. And I spend most of my time now on open source and open standards through the Academy Software Foundation and other efforts also, including the Metaverse Standard Forum that I'll talk about a little bit here. So that's our agenda for today. With a bit of context, since the Metaverse is in the air these days, we'll start with an overview of that. Then we'll go into open source and the foundation and finish with open standards. We'll do a few polls along the way. We're going to start with this. What is your favorite Metaverse movie? We come from the movie business here. So it's a poll. If you go to, on your device, to pollev.com/ASWF, you write that up into your phone or your computer, you will see, it'll ask you to put your name, and then you will see that question pop up, and you can give an answer to that very important question. It's a softball question to get us started. So as you're doing that, is it going to be, there you go, Free Guy, where Taika Waititi steals the Metaverse from two engineers? Is it The Matrix, where machines have taken over the world and put everybody in the virtual world? Is it Tron, where Ed Dillinger stole the Metaverse from Jeff Bridges? Is it Ready Player One, where the same thing happened? There's a trend in all of those movie representation of the Metaverse where there's only one Metaverse created by some sort of a lone genius that's taken over by some bad guy. So Tron is ahead. That's great. Thank you very much. 13 results. So most of you have been. You're right. There's many, and there's actually a list of. Currently, I have 37 Metaverse movies in the list. Yeah, and so I just put those that were maybe most recognizable. But you're right. Lawnmower Man should be there. Okay, if you can, a more serious question. If you can just give me an idea of the role that you play in your company, that would be great, just for being able to skew the debate and the discussion. That's great. Developers, makes sense. Here at O3DCon is the majority. That's great. 10 results. Thank you for that. Okay. So, Open Metaverse. I'll breeze through things. This is actually a 40 minutes presentation, so I'm going to squeeze it and skip over some things. So there is this great movie, I don't know if you saw it, from an open source project called the Opti project, where they created a time-lapse movie representing the evolution of the internet since its beginning, and that's the movie. So what you see here is a representation of all the networks that were created at the beginning. You have the year over here, 1998, and growing. It'll go through 2021. You have the main companies that were building most of the network at that time. And you have the color coding, which is in blue North America, in green Europe, in red Asia Pacific, in pink Latin America, and yellow Africa. And you even have the US military there in brown. And can we close the lights or turn those lights down a little bit so we can see the image? So that, as a way of a preamble, the internet is the biggest engineering project that we've ever done as the human race. And it's the single technology that enabled the most creation of wealth ever. Yeah, in the history of mankind. We think about all the companies now that are worth trillions of dollars. They're all built on this, and this was built on open source and open standards. So whatever happens to the next phase of the internet, and right now we're calling it the Metaverse, you know, this new interface on the internet that is a dimensional interface driven by game engines and interactivity. Whatever happens, the next interface that we put on top of that, it's really important that it be based on open source code and open standards. So it gives us a responsibility at this phase in time to not screw it up. And in the last 5, 6 years, the internet has not taken a good turn. There's been a lot of companies that have managed to build walled garden on the internet, places where you're kind of stuck in there, and they're trying to keep you in there, and you cannot exchange your data. You don't even have control over your data personally, and the internet is being sliced off in sections. We don't want that to happen for the metaverse. So what we're doing, what we're talking about, is extremely important. You can download that movie if you want to use it under the Creative Commons license. So the metaverse will be built by all of us meaning all our companies and all of us as individual. And we have to make sure that there's room for everyone. And our aspiration from the Academy Software Foundation is the metaverse. We want it to be open and fair and safe and social. There's a lot there. Here, I'm just here to talk about Open and the Academy Software Foundation specifically, and how we got organized ourselves, very similarly to the Open 3D Engine Foundation, to do our work, to help engineers who do open source software, and to help move the cause forward. So in the motion picture business, there was a lot of open source code that was created by engineers and brought to a certain level of efficiency. As you know, many open source projects are created all the time, thousands and millions. Not all of them survive. A large number of them die on the vine. But from time to time, you have open source projects that really get traction, and they get to a point where they need support. So I don't think you need this. This is a presentation for a wider audience, what open source software is. I'll skip over that. Something worth remembering, that every software has a cost, including open source software. And what we do in our foundations is we share those costs between a large number of companies, and we empower developers to lead development. I show this example just because it's fun. This is a Sony Bravia software stack, the TV that you can buy at Best Buy. So 50 million lines of code in a Sony Bravia, and 18 to 90% of it being open source. It's like that everywhere. The internet is like that. 80 to 90% of the internet is open source code. What you have as commercial application is this layer on top. And when we're talking about the metaverse, it's going to be something yet very similar. And there'll be competing commercial applications on top, not just one big metaverse application, but many, many of them. Sorry. And that's what we need to build the metaverse infrastructure for. This is just pointing out to the fact that open source is not just for libraries and background stuff. It's also for front-end applications like Blender and WordPress. These are many different foundations that are created to support open source in all over the ecosystem and different vertical business. All of them here, including, and we're here, the Academy Software Foundation in film. We're one of many. So the Academy Software Foundation, in our case, was created in collaboration between the Academy of Motion Picture and the Linux Foundation, with that message, that mission to provide a neutral forum for open source software in the motion picture industry, and make that open source software available in a structured way to other industries, the broader media industry and any other that comes up. This is, we don't need to go into details of this. This is the timeline of when the Academy Software Foundation was created by the SciTech Council of the Academy in 2018, and how we grew where compared to other foundations. We are small, but this is how members came in, and the founding members and the studios all joined the projects that we got going. OpenVDB was gifted by NBC Universal, OpenColorIO by Sony, OpenEXR by Disney, and studios started contributing open source code that they were owning, but that they thought should be taken care of in a place that built a number of support mechanisms that I'll mention briefly. So these are the members of the Academy Software Foundation. We see the studios, Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, and most of them DreamWorks for NBC Universal, Netflix. We also see vendors of software, the Adobe and HP and Autodesk and others, and Unity is there, and Epic Game is there as well. So there's a nice consortium of companies. The mission is to increase the quality and quantity of open source contribution. I won't go through the detail of the goals, but some highlights is we created the CI infrastructure so that all of our open source projects sit on a build infrastructure that is open source itself, and that can be taken by smaller studios who want to get into open source development to get the, and we publish the scripts and the recipes on how our open source projects are built. And we do a lot of things. We have a document if you're interested in open source in entertainment and film and TV. This document here at report.aswf.io, it's a white paper that explains how the benefits of using open source software within the media industries. And this is how we're structured in terms of managing our projects. We have 13 projects in the foundation. The engineers that work on every one of the projects have a TSC, and they meet, the chair of each project meets every 2 weeks in the Technical Advisory Council. That's where all the decisions are made about the projects that are submitted and that join the foundation. The board and the outreach committee, which is the marketing arm of the foundation, they're all there to help the engineers do what they want to do. So the beating heart and the brain of the foundation are the developers. And magical things happen when you let the engineers in charge of solving the problems. We found that the acceleration of commits and pull requests has been great. We have a demo reel. I will play it quickly. So these are various shots of movies that our libraries were used on. Coming out the sound. We don't have a Dolby Atmos sound here, but the images will speak for themselves. Oh, it's okay. Mm-hmm. That's fine. Oh, no, don't do it. It will, no. Thank you. I can do the voiceover. So that's the Moon Shadow. This one is a latest Spider-Man movie. The Doctor Strange, The Matrix, all movies that came out in the last 18 months. And they're all examples of various libraries that we use for transport of the images, for very fundamental things that were used to be proprietary to every studios that now are shared and developed by the community together. That's my favorite shot of the year, zombie Doctor Strange. There you go. Oh, that's it. Okay, so these are the projects in the foundation. Some of them may be important in the metaverse. We have MaterialX over here, OpenEXR over there, MaterialX for material transport, OpenEXR for high dynamic range transport of images. OpenVDB is about simulation, about transport also of simulation material between different applications and different studios, and many more. So mostly image-based tools, but many of them applies to the 3D world, and we have a number of working groups, including one on USD in gaming, which is getting into the crossover between film and TV. One project I want to talk about in particular is this one, the Digital Production Example Library. So Royal, you were mentioning how the studios are concerned about their assets and don't want to let them go. We created a repository We went around to the studios the first time when we created the foundation to get them to approve an open source license so that their legal department didn't have to always review every open source project when it came in. They've agreed on Apache 2, and after a long process, and then we went back to them with this question, is like, how come you don't want to let your production data be used for the reason that Royal mentioned? And they told us we don't want it to be, repurposed nefariously. We don't want to be used. We don't want it to be used in production. We don't want somebody to use, our Doctor Strange data into whatever movie they want. So we said, okay, so what kind of restriction would you like to have? And the long story short is we built a special license that is that they sign, and that people who want to use that data have to sign, where they only use the data for education, for testing, for demonstration purpose. And this allows software vendors like Autodesk and Unity, Unreal to have access to data to test and to demonstrate the use of the software at scale, which was a problem. If you didn't have that sort of large data sets, you were testing with much smaller data sets, and once your software entered production, it broke every time because under the strain of the production assets. So this has just started. There's just a few elements in the production library, but keep an eye on it if you're looking for super heavy data to test your software in the future. MaterialX, as I mentioned before, is one candidate for the metaverse in terms of material transport. So when we talk about well, I'll go into the Metaverse Standard Forum later about the candidates for candidates technology to allow us to transfer assets between different metaverses. MaterialX is a candidate for the material. OpenEXR, which has just been implemented here in Unreal Engine for in-camera visual effects. Now you have 16K stream of sequences on this video wall that are handled by the engine in real time. I'll just play that. And there's a lot of testing artifacts here going on. The ball going up and down is to test the multiple screen, multi-GPU thing. But the point is that the plays you have in the background are at 60K, 120 frames per second. And the engine can take that in those kind of situations. And then it's available in gaming as well now. So how technology from film is transferring over to gaming. We have a landscape, so we have 13 projects in the foundation, but there is about 120 different open source projects active in the motion picture industry. You can find out more about them on our website. And one thing that we found out in our foundation, when the studios got together to talk open source, this happened to be at the same time then the murder of George Floyd happened, and every studio, and diversity and inclusion became a very hot topic in everywhere on Earth or in the United States. And studios department that had diversity and inclusion were looking for a place where they could compare notes. And our foundation became that place, even though we were about open source. The D&I people created a working group and started compare notes, and that's been one of our most active working group in terms of injecting the principle of diversity and inclusion in our foundation, making room for, we were very old white men oriented when we created the foundation, CTOs and people from the industry. And that is in the process of changing with a lot more younger people, diversity, both in male, female, and in people from various skin colors, very important stuff. We're doing these behind the screens from our engineers that are working on our projects, and we're sending them out in high schools and in colleges to talk about what they do, so that people understand that they can have a job as a developer into the motion picture industry, which is not obvious. Other industries like gaming and Silicon Valley attract most of the developers. So we are out there putting our best face with the younger generation. So that's our foundation. You can contribute, you know this here in this group, how to contribute, and we have all these different things that you can come and participate into. So that's the overview of the Academy Software Foundation. I had the poll there if you had any questions, but I think we'll keep them all for the end. I want to go to the next topic, which is the Metaverse Standard Forum, which is maybe more salient to the Metaverse discussion that we've been having around here. So the Academy Software Foundation, we became part of this Open Metaverse Standards Forum when it was created just a few months ago in June. How many of you are aware of the Metaverse Standard Forum? Yes? Good. So that's their mission, venue for cooperation between standard organization and companies to foster the development of interop standards for an open and inclusive metaverse. So these are the people who, the kickoff was at SIGGRAPH in August, and after the forum was created in June, it was led by Mark Petit here of Epic Games, but many people like Steve May from Pixar, who hold USD, was there. We had people from NVIDIA, Unity Technology was there, Chronos Group, Neil Trevitt, who is the leader now of the Metaverse Standard Forum, was part of it, Guido Caroni, who's now at Adobe, who created USD. Many folks of importance, Neil Stevenson in particular, who invented the term metaverse in his novel Snow Crash, did a great speech about his experience and how he invented the term and how he kept close to the evolution of what may become the metaverse. That was a great thing, and it's recorded on their website. These were the 35 companies that created the Metaverse Standard Forum. We were up here along with those numbers, a diverse background, IKEA and others that were part of it. And today in September, well, actually there's an update on this slide. So in October, they have 1,800 members. So it went from 32 in June to 1,800 companies today. And how many of your companies are part of the Metaverse Standard Forum? Okay, same hands, okay. Maybe you are, yes, Amazon probably is. So it's a phenomenon of sort as far as these kind of things go. And obviously there's a big challenge in aligning such a large number of companies, but the Metaverse Standard Forum is up for it. It's a very diversified group of companies. Essentially, everyone who has an interest in the metaverse is there. And in terms of, so I don't need to dwell into how standards are important. There's different ways to do them. You know, obviously there are standards like the electricity plug that we understand the importance of that when we go to other countries and it's a different plug. But here with the metaverse, we're likely to deal with a collection of standards, just like the internet has been in the beginning. And that's what they're aiming for, to make sure that the metaverse will go from this tangle of cables connected in a haphazard way in point-to-point fashion to something that will make a little bit more sense. And there's an important slide here about the relationship of open standards with regards to open source, right? So open source is a very bottom-up process. As you know, the engineers are the one who do the work. They see the problem, they write code, and that code is successful or not, and eventually the open source projects that are successful become open standards. The standard specification approach of the Metaverse Standard Forum is from the top down. Essentially, they will look at specific problems and they will design a specification for those problems. And then the specification will be open and they'll suggest them to existing standard organization. They are not a standard description organization themselves. And then these specifications will be implemented in any number of ways, some of them proprietary, some of them open source, but there will be a mechanism to certify the implementation if they're true to the specification or not. So in a nutshell, here's an example, and that's the first order of business that this group is taking, is about interop. That is the proposal is to use USD and MaterialX to take authoring data and GLTF as a leaf delivery protocol for the data itself as the way to handle data interrupt for the metaverse moving forward. I'll come back to this one. I'll get to this. So this, a number of working exploratory group, as they call them, have been created. The first one is on asset interop, and their goal, these are the companies that have committed to work on it. And the goal is to take a car, as we discussed a little bit before in the last session, a car that runs in a game and with all of its dynamics and simulation and steering and all the rest of it, and to translate it from one game to another. And that is something that's not possible to do today in one block. You have to, if you want to do that, you have to transfer piece by piece the different components of the car. But the goal is to really take the whole car and have it move from one place to another. And the first concrete projects of this working group will be to do just that between probably Fortnite and Roblox to start with, and then others, and to develop as this is done, and the learnings from that process are digested to come to a specification for how assets of that type should be exchanged. And once that's done successfully, the next step will be more sophisticated data, either related to world composition or to all the way up to humans and character rigs and all that. 5 minutes, okay. So I have the 5 minutes mark. So the way the Metaverse Forum works is very sophisticated. It's through Google Docs. So when you have 300 companies in a working group, and at the beginning of the Metaverse Standard Forum, they put up this list. They said, okay, people, please enter what you think we should be doing. This was the list of topics, and people voted up and down what to do. 3D assets, well, the first line here, the Metaverse Standard Registry, is something that was created already, essentially a registry of all the standard organizations that may have an interest in this. But 3D assets and privacy came on top, and that's the first working group that was created, as I showed on the other end. And so this is how you get involved at metaversestandard.org. It's a very open process. You can go already on that website and see most of what they're doing. Your company can sign up, and then you have access to the repository themselves with a lot of PowerPoint deck and the history of everything. So that's it. That's my presentation. If you have questions, please write it here, paullevy.com/ASWF. But since we're a small group, you can also just shout it out. And we have 3 minutes left. Thank you for listening. Nobody's sleeping. Yes, everybody's awake. Yeah, thank you. Any questions? No questions?
How long it takes to, I don't know if there is a standard that has been, the first standard that was approved, but in general, an average discussion into, I don't know, some identity standard that can be used between, for email accounts and maybe some asset ownership kind of connection between my email account to an asset, so people know I own that asset, or not even own, like I'm the publisher of the asset, almost for a recognition more than anything else. I don't know if something like that has been done, and how, I'm more concerned about how long it takes for this group together or to take an initiative and make it official, just to get an idea of months, years.
Yeah. So it's not going to be fast. That's for sure. But they have, the people who created that organization are very focused on moving practical step forward. So the example of moving a car between an application and another is something very concrete, and that they are intent on working on, and showing demonstrations of this process at conferences soon in the next 6 months. And I've heard that they want to be done with that phase at SIGGRAPH next year, like gave themselves a year to nail down that part. If you want to exchange that kind of data, we recommend that you do it this way. Yeah, and then they're going to move on to other things. I think it's a good question to ask, and really it's not for me to represent them, but even if you ask them, Neil Trevitt, who's the executive director of the Standards Forum, he wouldn't commit to a time frame, but he would say that it's better to have this process than not have it. Yeah, because otherwise we're in this kind of free-for-all situation that we are now, with different. If you think that Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite are all mini metaverses or prototypes of metaverses, and that the metaverse will be really a networking of those, an organic growth of those mini metaverses connecting with each other and becoming the interface to the 3D experiential interactive interface to the internet. Yeah, it's most likely to happen that way. And really, we want it to happen that way, as opposed to any one company inventing something proprietary that now you have to join and you're stuck in that space, and as we've seen in some parts of the internet. And I got the stop sign. So even if you have other questions, cannot answer them. Or you can come in and see me after. All right? Thank you.